Hey everybody, I'm really excited to show you guys what I have discovered with the new updated Procreate 5X. There's 5 really great things that I really want to show you guys, but overall there's a lot of new updates that I encourage you to check out yourself because after all, this is a free update to Procreate. Now I really want to get into the first thing that I find has really improved my workflow in Procreate, but before we get into that, I just want to let you guys know that this video has been sponsored by Paperlike. Now, this whole list isn't really in order, but I do definitely think that this thing is the most important, and that's going to be the new brush engine, and it's really just one new setting that they added, which is this blur setting in the wet mix menu. What this has done is finally allow Procreate to mix colors in the way that makes sense to me, the way that you'd expect to on Photoshop, Krita, Clip Studio Paint, whatever you're used to using on a desktop application, this emulates it much closer. So in case you don't know what I mean, I'm going to prove it to you right here. I've painted 2 sets of different random colors to blend. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brush that doesn't have this new brush setting activated, and then I'm going to take a brush that Procreate has provided that actually has this brush setting so that you can blur and smudge much better. So if we go into the airbrushing menu and then we click soft brush, which is the softest brush that comes with Procreate default and the brush that you can use to smudge with, that's going to give you the most smooth gradient. We're just going to start blending away right here. Just normally, not really trying to do anything special. And then I'm just going to blend this out right here as well. Just try to get a nice mixed smooth color there. All right, so now let's actually switch over to the brush that they've provided in this new Procreate 5X version, which is called, they have these different versions of it. They have the soft blend, medium hard blend, hard blend. Let's just take the soft blend so it approximates the soft brush that we just used. So now with this brush, I'm going to do the same thing. Just going to mix these colors a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same to the bottom. Now, you might not see too much of a difference right now, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to get a little bit closer and help you see exactly what's going on. So if we take a closer look here, we can see what's going on, especially if we pay attention to the edges. You can see that this is basically just one average color. Procreate pretty much just picked a color and then started painting with it. That's almost how it feels when you're painting. And the edge is fairly hard, even though we used a very soft brush. But if we look at this one, we can see there's a few more colors and that the edge is much smoother than it would have been compared to this one. And if we take a look here, again, we see this kind of the same thing. We see a little hint of the swirl pattern there. But if we look at this over here, you see it's a much more better approximation. This is where it really comes in handy because you can see this is really just a blob. But if we look at this, you can really kind of see that yin and yang pattern here as I push the blue into the red and then vice versa. You can see the orange that started to come here into the blue, but here it all just looks like this orange with a little bit of blue everywhere, right? So when you're painting, I find it super helpful to have a lot of different types of brushes to have that setting activated. So I'm actually in the process of taking some new brushes and creating them so that they work more like the brushes that I'm used to in Clip Studio Paint. And what I love about the brushes there is that when I apply a soft pressure to the brush, or the pencil rather, it can actually get this really interesting blending effect. But if I want to apply hard pressure or heavy pressure, I can get a crisp edge. And so I love this strategy in my painting where I can paint a crisp edge and then decide where I want to fade that out without having to switch over to the smudge tool. And it gives you a really nice gradient. And you can see I have this like effortless transition from smooth to crisp edge. And so that is something that I'm trying to incorporate more into my artwork. And I'm super happy that it's going to be super easy to do that in Procreate now without having to struggle with the way the brushes blended together previously. Now, the next big thing that I'm really excited about is gradient maps. And I'm going to take this painting that I actually completed entirely in Procreate to show you, especially since it's in, grayscale, black and white. It's going to really show how the gradient maps work. So in order to find gradient maps, you just go to the adjustments menu here and then you hit gradient map and then you click layer. And then what it's going to do is it's going to evaluate all of the different values in your painting that you have so far, and it's going to assign a color to that value. Now, the way it decides which color to pick is based off of the gradient maps that you have access to down here. So as you can see, as I scroll through them, I get a really different look and a different feel for how my painting looks compared to how it looked when I just had, the black and white. So the great thing about this is when you start with a grayscale painting, usually you wouldn't go as far as to have such deep blacks and whites as I have here because I intended for this to be black and white, but you would do something with more medium gray tones and then you would pick one of these gradients to apply to it that could give you a base to start adding your colors. And I actually really like this neon one. It actually makes it look really like vaporwave cyberpunky. And then you could just use this as a base and start adding more colors to it and painting it the way you wanted to for your own artistic vision. This is something that is usually you find on higher end software like Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop, and I'm super happy that it's here. It's going to make coloring a lot easier for people like me who find it's a lot easier to focus on the values first and then start thinking about color later on in the painting. If you want to create your own, you can actually add a new gradient or just click on one of these. And what it's going to show you is a selection of different colors that it's using for the gradient map. The left is going to be basically what color is going to be assigned to black, and the right is going to be basically what color is assigned to white, and then everything in between. And so you can click on the gradient map, it will add a point there and it will estimate what you want, but you can actually click on it again and pick whatever color you want using whatever color swatches or color wheels that you have available. So for the third feature I want to show you guys, I'm going to use another painting that I did entirely in Procreate as well. And this one is going to be the overhauled adjustments and the new filters that have been added. So the adjustments now work. If you go into the adjustments layer, you can click one that we're used to like Gaussian blur. And what it shows you is that there's a layer and a pencil menu. And normally you would have just clicked Gaussian blur and then it would blur the whole thing, right? Now we have the addition to be able to use a pencil, and then we can pick exactly where we want to blur, which is really, really awesome because now you can create intentional effects without having to select and mask like you did previously. And if you want to go back to applying it to an entire layer just like normally, you would just do the same thing, and then you would click layer, and then as you're used to working with the Gaussian blur, you would just use your finger to slide and it would affect the blur like that. Now, in addition to these new adjustment settings, we have new filters. And so now we can do these really cool filters. And I'm going to show you a few of them. This is bloom. And I'm just going to go by layer here. And you can see what it does is it picks certain areas to just overexpose. And you can pick the amount of overexposure that you want. And it really has this amazing effect. And there's a ton of settings that you can work with here as well. We also have glitch, which is one of my favorites here. Glitch is basically this really cool cyberpunky effect here where you can slide to increase the amount here, and then you can actually use all of these different settings and versions to create a very unique glitch effect. My favorite is diverge because I love these horizontal lines here. And then what I would do personally is kind of mask this out using the, just like we talked about before, using the pencil setting so that I can pick and choose where I want it to happen rather than it just happen to the entire layer, because it looks pretty cool right now, but I still want some of my painting to show through. Next up is going to be great for those of you who like to work with comics, and that's going to be the halftone setting. Now, I've heard that this is a little bit too intense, and so you can kind of pick and choose, maybe mix around with layers to get your desired effect, but it's still really cool, and you can have a few different options available to you here to really change how this looks. I really love the kind of chromatic look of the newsprint. It's really nostalgic. And my second favorite here is going to be the chromatic aberration. So this is something that normally you have to follow a lot of steps to be able to enable regardless of what program you're using, but this is really cool, something that not even Photoshop or Clip Studio has, and you can just change how much chromatic aberration is going to be present in the painting. And so basically what that is it takes the red, green, and blue layers of all of the colors and it shifts them around. And so you can see here I'm increasing the effect, and I can choose different settings for how hard or soft I want the transition to be, or I can just straight up displace the entire layer itself in this different way. And usually you want it to be a little bit more subtle, and it has this really, really dope effect. And again, this is going to be really good when you combine it with the pencil feature so that you can pick and choose where you want this effect to be applied to. Now, the next big addition is going to be the Navigator, as I like to use it, or the reference window that's added into Procreate 5X. This is a really cool feature where you just go into this wrench icon here, go into Canvas, and then you turn on the reference setting. And what it does is it basically creates a window that shows you your entire canvas as you're working. And this is something I really, really enjoy, because if, let's say I want to get in here and start working on the lips, right? I get my brush and I want to create some harder edges and softer edges and get rid of some of these black lines here. And I'm really in the details right now, but it's nice to be able to see the entire canvas as I'm doing this so I don't lose track of, what the main goal of this painting is. And this is something that I really struggled with on the iPad because it's really small. I'm really used to a much bigger, surface area to work with, but this has really made it a lot easier. Even though I've been using the iPad for so long, this is something that I can still really, really appreciate. And God, just look at that brush. It's just so smooth, right? I can just pick this white color and just It's just so effortless. I'm just so excited about that setting. But this also has another feature where you can use it as a reference window where you can click image here and then import an image from your device to use as a reference. So now you see I've loaded in the reference that I used to create this artwork, and I can move it around by clicking on that line at the top, and it just stays wherever I want on canvas, and I can reference it while I'm working. However, for me personally, I still prefer to use VizRef or PureRef on the desktop because it allows me to have a lot bigger of a selection of images to use for my references here. And I can't use that because that is, that is not safe for YouTube. So we're just gonna hopefully blur that, or maybe I can just show a different set of references here. So you can see here, I have a lot of different references and I can just switch through them. This is a lot more efficient for me. I prefer this way. And then sometimes when you close and reopen Procreate, this window can disappear, but the setting is still enabled in the canvas settings. So sometimes it's a little glitchy, but it's still really useful. But for me, it's way, way more useful as the canvas view where I can see the entire artwork as I'm working. So before we get into the next feature, I just want to let you guys know about today's sponsor, Paperlike. Paperlike is an amazing matte screen protector that you can apply to your iPad that really allows you to have a paper-like feel as you're drawing on the screen. When I switched from my Moleskine sketchbook to an iPad back in 2017, it was really, really difficult because the glass and the smooth plastic is just way too slick on my hands. It was really difficult to transition to. Honestly, a lot of professional artists complain about that. That slickness on the screen is the first issue why they don't get into digital art more. And so I really, really recommend it if you're looking into getting your own iPad or you've already had one and you find it a little difficult to work with. You can check out Paperlike in the link in the description box below or in the pinned comment, and I highly recommend you get yours today. And finally, the fifth new setting that we have in Procreate 5X is going to be the new lasso color fill. And so this is going to be something that really depends on your workflow, but I find a lot of digital artists love to be able to use the lasso select for detailed selections and then instantly fill with color so that they can quickly get their flats in. So this is something that I used a lot for this type of painting right here, where you can see I have a lot of selections. Everything is confined to a certain line art, at least in the beginning. You might not be able to see some of them now, but what I can do here is I can get into the selection menu and then I can click on color fill down here. And what that will allow me to do is pick a color that I want to use as the color fill. I'm going to go ahead and add another layer before I do that and go back to the selection menu, and I can just select and it will fill with color. So now you can see I can just keep adding different selections. If I wanted to here, I could test out really, really rapidly, saying like, okay, what kind of shape would look really good on this canvas? And we can actually go ahead, since we can't see the whole thing, and just go into the reference menu again and see exactly what we're doing and how that affects the entire canvas. So we can go in and create a really detailed selection here. I'm just being random. And then we can see it instantly update on the reference menu there. And that's just so powerful. That makes this, again, like I said in the title, like this is perfect now because we just, there's always room for improvement, but this is now super mature and fully fledged in my opinion. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'm going to go back to working on some faces and some sketches so I can get ready to make a course one day, hopefully before I die. Hopefully, I said I would make a course, this year, but I don't know. It's still a lot of work for me to do, but stay tuned. I will be reviewing this new Samsung Galaxy S7 Plus on this channel very, very soon. So make sure you subscribe. We're going to compare it to the iPad Pro, and we're going to take a closer look to Clip Studio Paint on the iPad as well on the Galaxy S7 Plus. So without further ado, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.